And welcome back into the Bruins beat on CLNS Media. My name is Evan Marinofsky, and it's just us. There's no guests today. No Connor, no Ty, no Dale, no Marina, no Logan. It's just us. Me and you, the listener, just hanging out, chatting. That's today's episode. Just us. So I like doing this here and there. I like to have these solo episodes, mainly so I can kind of get your questions and answer them and see what you're thinking about and what's on your mind. And I know that, they always say in school that if one person has a question, many have a question. So I think a lot of these questions, a lot of you are wondering the same. And I got a lot of questions, which I was very happy about in this episode. So we will dive right in. And it's good that we have two games to go off of as well. It's good that we've seen a little sample size here. I know people are going to say, "Oh, it's only the Sabres. Oh, it's only the Red Wings." Well, the guys who were scoring against the Sabres and the Red Wings weren't even scoring before. So it's a good sign that guys like Nick Foligno and Erik Haula and Thomas Nosek and Trent Frederick are scoring goals at the moment. So encouraging weekend, that is for sure. And we'll dive right into these questions because, as I said, I know a lot of you are probably feeling the same way. So we'll start with an interesting proposition. Whiskey Dad of Twins. What an awesome name. Whiskey Dad of Twins asked us on Twitter, as well as I'm getting there, Alex Hernley. They both have similar questions, so I'll kind of group them together. Whiskey Dad of Twins said, with Senyshyn also requesting a trade, would dealing him with DeBrusk increase chances of a better trade as DeBrusk is underperforming, increase the attractability at all? I'll even read Alex's question. He said, what type of caliber of defenseman do you think the Bruins could get with Senyshyn and DeBrusk together? Love your work. Thank you, Alex. I don't know that I don't think Senyshyn increases what you're getting for DeBrusk if you put him in the deal. Think about it like this. They're both somewhat struggling, underperforming wingers, and Senyshyn has barely even touched the NHL level. So I don't know if Senyshyn gets you a lot. I don't think he gets you really much of anything. Mainly because, I mean, you look at Senyshyn, and again, he's struggled to stay at the NHL level. Teams know this. The whole idea of DeBrusk and Senyshyn being former first round picks, that ship has kind of sailed, right? Like now, if you were trading for two first round picks from like the 2020 draft, it's very different, right? They're still the players are still probably prospects and high value. Not a lot of value with Zach Senyshyn right now. And I think there's still a fair amount of value with Jake DeBrusk, but I just don't think Senyshyn increases it that much. I just don't think it does. I don't teams are not going to sign on for two struggling wingers, especially one who's not maintained play at the NHL level. So, what do I think Senyshyn gets you? I think a fair asking price for Senyshyn would be like a fourth or fifth round pick. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, but he's a former first round pick," and it's like, well, yeah, yeah, that is what it is. And that's all you. That's probably all you're going to get. I don't know. You're not going to get like a NHL player for Senyshyn unless a team really sees value in Senyshyn, which I don't think many do because he passed through waivers. So Senyshyn is not someone I see increasing the value of a trade very much. Um, I think a fourth or fifth round pick for Senyshyn is a good asking price. You know why? Because you get to pick again. Now, not in the first round. And do I trust the Bruins to make a good pick in the fourth round? No, I don't. But it's still better than just having Senyshyn sit in Providence and not do anything, or not do anything. I mean, he's playing in Providence, but not helping at the NHL level. So yeah, and I don't blame Senyshyn for asking for a trade. By the way, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, what a traitor," and it's like, well, at the same time, think about it in your own job, right? You're being buried on, a team you don't want to be on, or, you're not doing projects you like to do. You want to go somewhere else. You want to go somewhere that's going to use you to your full potential. The Bruins are not that place. I don't blame him for going somewhere else. It's like the Torrey Krug stuff. Torrey Krug scored in the Winter Classic uh, on, I believe it was Saturday, whatever New Year's Day was. Saturday. The days don't make any sense anymore. But Torrey Krug scored, and I tweeted something like, "Oh, Torrey Krug's a great guy, deserves a championship." People were, some people were replying, "Well, he's on another team now. I don't want him to win a championship." And I understand that. I do. I get it. You love the Bruins. That's the team you want to win. But to me, I think Krug's a great dude. Always wish he would have won one here. Should have won one here. Should have won two here, maybe even more. Um, but I hope I like when guys go elsewhere and find some success, especially good guys. And Torrey Krug, as you all know, was a very good guy. Is a very good guy. So To me, I look at Krug as someone who I hope finds success. I know many of you will disagree. I don't love the idea of the Blues winning a Stanley Cup, especially with Jordan Binnington. I could go without Binnington winning another cup. You know, kind of a cocky kid, annoying, maybe not the greatest human in the world. But at the same time, I would like to see Krug succeed elsewhere. So I did like seeing him score in the Winter Classic. I did. As for the actual Winter Classic, no one asked about the Winter Classic or anything, but I'm still gonna talk about it because I think it's a fun event. I thought it was really cool this year. Baseball stadiums, they've kind of done the good ones, right? They've done Fenway, they've done Wrigley, so it's hard to do like another historic one. They did Dodger Stadium for the Stadium Series a few years ago. To me, this one had the elements, right? The freezing cold. It was like -8 at puck drop. Guys had water frozen in their beards. Could not have been comfortable to play in. My guess is those guys probably wouldn't want to play in those conditions again. But nonetheless, a cool event, really cool event. It's funny. I saw Pete Blackburn tweet something similar to this. I hope they do away with Stadium Series just because that kind of diminishes the value of an outdoor game, especially the Winter Classic. Because it's like, oh, we're just going to play outdoors in these places. But what I would love to see is kind of what the NHL did with like Lake Tahoe, right? Where you have this huge event in a beautiful place, money be damned. Who really care? Obviously, I know they want to make money. I know they want, full stadiums. I know they want people at the games. But man, Tahoe was perfect. Like the scenery and the backdrop and the whole Lake Tahoe experience was so cool to see. You almost didn't need fans. It's kind of like the Field of Dreams game in the MLB, right? Like I think there were only like a couple thousand fans in attendance for that. I don't think that was like that that didn't have like tens of thousands of people, but it was so freaking cool. So I hope they find a sort of a way to do that in coming years when COVID isn't such a big thing. Do some scenic places. Maybe do the old, maybe do the frog pond in Boston. How about that, huh? No, I don't know what they would do. I think Boston has been, they've been in 4 outdoor games now. The Bruins have been because it was 10, uh, 16, 19 and last year. So the Bruins have had their outdoor games. And they've exercised their places around here. Maybe I know Spokesy and many believe Hockeytown should have a game. Maybe just take the whole roof off the place. Maybe if they ever decide to renovate Hockeytown, they'll just throw the roof off and say we're playing NHL games here for a month. Right? Every team gets to play at Hockeytown. No roof, freezing cold Saugus, drinks at the Kowloon after. I think that sounds perfect. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the Winter Classic. I just hope I wonder who the next matchup will be. I like to ask these questions. I'm curious. Who do you think the next matchup's going to be? Just us two. You tell me, DM me, tweet at me, email me, whatever. Because I don't know. They've done a lot of the big market teams. I don't want to see Chicago like for the next 20 years in the Stanley in the Winter Classic or an outdoor game. So wouldn't hate see what a Florida matchup does or Carolina. Do something a little different outside the box. Maybe California, like they did Stadium Series there in 2014, I believe. So do a Winter Classic there if you want. I don't know. Do what you want. I'll criticize or like it either way. At any rate, that is Senyshyn and his trade value. Boston Bruins Forever asked many questions, so I will try to answer them as best as I possibly can. I will start with his DeBrusk questions because that's kind of what we just talked about. He says, I know there have been discussions or rumors about Edmonton wanting DeBrusk for Yamamoto is supposedly one rumor. I can see Edmonton wanting someone like Omar too to solidify their horrible goalie situation. I know Oscar Klefbom is out for the year, and then he asked something similar. Can you see the Bruins doing a larger deal for the future, like DeBrusk, Olmark, and picks or prospects for like Yamamoto, Klefbom? I think this can benefit both sides tremendously. What are your thoughts? It's a cool idea on paper. The holdup with Olmark is that he has a no movement clause for the first 2 years of his deal. So, like, is he really going to want to waive it to go to Edmonton a year, like not even a year after signing with Boston? Probably not. No, he probably isn't. And I do think there's value with Olmark. Like, I'm not one of those people who wants to give up on Olmark just yet. I am interested to see what the term and the money is on Rask. If this is just a 2-year thing, then whatever. But if they're pinning Rask down for 3 years, which I don't imagine they would, but if that was like the plan, and you have Swayman there too, I don't know. Then Olmark, maybe you somehow try to do something with that, but I'm not ready to give up on him yet, and I don't think he'll be traded this year just because of the no movement clause, and I don't think Sweeney is going to just months after signing him to a pretty long deal be like, well, we're done. Yeah, We're trying to trade him. We're trying to trade him. So no, I don't think Olmark will be traded. The interesting one, though, is DeBrusk for Yamamoto. I know this is something that's been floated around a bit. Struggling winger for struggling winger. I completely understand it. The last thing this team needs is another struggling winger. The last thing this team needs is a fringe top six player who has struggled mightily. Do you trust the Bruins to jumpstart a winger like Yamamoto or any winger who is having trouble scoring? No, you don't. You don't. You don't. And I get it, right? You get what you get for DeBrusk. You can try your best to get what you get. And we'll get to in a little bit what you could get for DeBrusk in a max scenario. But just trading him for another struggling winger, I don't know. There's a good amount of there's some value to DeBrusk. I mean, I was just reading, Bleacher Report did a ranking of the trade block for the deadline, and DeBrusk was number one. Now, again, that's one person's opinion. That's not like NHL GMs putting that together, but there's something there, right? Like you could get something for Jake DeBrusk, absolutely. But I just don't think that for another struggling winger like Yamamoto, who does not even have the stats that DeBrusk did in his best years, I can't sit here and say that I would want that. I wouldn't. I just, I know people like to just get new players. Ooh, Yamamoto's new. And it's like, no, no, he's struggling too. Like the same issues DeBrusk has, you're going to get with Yamamoto. So, um, I don't know. I just, there's not a lot of desire to do that. If they did that, I'd kind of go, well, okay, another winger. You got to decide if you're going to put him on the third line, or maybe he'll slot in on the second line, like for a game, and maybe he'll get healthy scratched. It's just they have too many of these guys. You get Nick Foligno, you've got Erik Haula, and we'll get to those guys in a bit. And Nosek, and now obviously DeBrusk right now, and you got Carson Kuhlman and Oskar Steen, and you got all these guys who are fringe lineup and top six guys. That it's like, well, why would you get another? What is the unless the Bruins hockey ops department can sit there and say, no, Kyler Yamamoto has a real spot in the top six of this team, then I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, that's a great trade, because you're getting worse. That's not a that's it's less than lateral in my estimation. Who knows? Yamamoto could become a 40-point guy, a 50-point guy, and I could sit here and eat crow. But I have a weird feeling that's not going to be the case. There's not a lot of upside with that. I don't see the huge upside in DeBrusk for Yamamoto. And then Clefbaum, I think there's a better left shot defenseman who the Bruins could go after, who I will get to in a little bit. Pretty safe bet that this player would be a huge hit on the Bruins. On to more questions. What other questions do we got here? Okay, Boston Bruins Forever, who had many questions, which I appreciate very much, asked Oskar Steen, I think, can play up and down that lineup, but he's not a true fourth liner. What line do you think he'd play his best on? I think with DeBrusk and Coyle. I don't actually hate that. I think that's a pretty good idea. Oskar Steen is good. He's quick, speedy, gets in corners well, battles for pucks well. I think in a good scenario, yeah, DeBrusk and Coyle actually is not a terrible place to put him on that right side. I don't see him sticking there though. I don't hate this for the moment, DeBrusk, Coyle, Foligno line. So I see Steen more on the fourth line. To me, I think the scenario with Steen is I think he should be a regular on the fourth line. I think in a perfect world, it's Bleed, Nosek, and Steen. I think that is your perfect fourth line. We will get to why that's not going to happen in a little bit, but and I think Steen's best move is just to keep playing well on the fourth line and hopefully either solidify a spot there or move up the lineup. Like, I think that's, this is a very old analogy, but Brad Marchand did that. I know Evan says Oskar Steen and Brad Marchand are the same player. No, but I think you can there's ways to work your way up from the fourth line. I think a guy like Oskar Steen can do that. He's got speed. He's got some skill. I think once you solidify the D zone a little bit better, I think they're going to like him on that fourth line. I think he's a good player. I agree with you. And I would be interested to see with Coyle and DeBrusk what he could do for a larger sample size. Tough to get a large sample size right now with injuries and COVID and those things, but I do think Oskar Steen has a lot of value for this team, and I think he should be a regular in the lineup. I don't know why he hasn't been, but I think performances like he had a great pass to Nosek, I believe, on Nosek's goal against Detroit. So I like Oskar Steen. I do. I've always thought he was good. He's a small, fast guy, fits well, gives this team some speed, which is something they are kind of lacking in. So I like Steen. I like Steen. Boston Bruins Forever then asked, I think the best Bruins line is going to be Pasta Haula Hall. The confidence and chemistry will come. I believe there was another person who asked about this line, and I would be correct. Benjamin Dollymount asked, the games against Buffalo and Detroit show that Smith with Bergeron and Marchand is working great. Does this up the need for a legit second line center for Pasta and Hall? If so, who would work best with the two of them? So this is where things get interesting. I love the moves they did recently where they switched Pastrnak and Craig Smith. I thought they should have done that a long time ago. I thought that should have honestly been the move entering the season. Now, I initially said Coyle in between Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak, but Erik Haula works too. He worked well in these last two games. Quick, gets it on pucks well. Like, I think he's good digging for the puck, good in the dirty areas, fast. I think could work really, really well long term with Pastrnak and Hall. I would rather see Coyle there just because of the money he makes. And he's been producing well, but if they feel he's better with DeBrusk on the third line, obviously we've said this a million times in this show, he is a third line center on a really good team. So maybe that's what they're trying to do. At any rate, I don't know if Pasta Halla Hall is going to be the best line. It's hard to beat Marchand and Bergeron with anybody. But I do think you're going to see increase in production. You're already seeing it. David Pastrnak gets a lot of attention on the ice, which opens up space for Taylor Hall. We saw that in those games when Marchand was suspended, where when Bergeron was in the middle with Pastrnak and Hall had a lot more space because there was Bergeron to take care of and there was David Pastrnak to take care of. You got to eliminate the one-timer. You got to get up on him. You can't let him shoot. Can't let him get to those good areas, those high danger areas, which leaves room for Taylor Hall. And you're seeing that, right? Like there was a play I tweeted where Hall just kind of came in over the blue line. Four guys went to Pastrnak. Pastrnak passes it across. Hall takes like a one-timer. It's like, just get closer to the net. And I think that's going to come with time. And he did it later in the game when he actually scored against Buffalo. So I do think the confidence is there, or it will come. And I think the chemistry is there. I do. I think Pastrnak and Hall can work together. And you're seeing that, right? Like you are seeing that the way they play. And also people forget Taylor Hall's a very good passer. Really good passer. He had an awesome pass to McAvoy on McAvoy's goal in the Detroit game. And most of his points seasons where he has all these points, it's a lot of assists, way more assists than goals. So to me, I look at that and say, well, that's going to work. Especially with Haula in the middle, as I said, I think he's a sort of a jitterbug. He's fast. He's he had a nice goal against Detroit on Sunday. So I don't know if that's going to be the best line, but I think it's a much better second line than you had before, which is what you want. That's a good thing. So to me, that second line is good. Now, as for Pastrnak and Hall being long-term together, I think should be the case. So then the question becomes, are they going to need a legitimate second line center? Step one of that question is Erik Haula going to be a legitimate second line center? It kind of remains to be seen, right? Like it's hard to sit here and say for sure that Erik Haula is, without a doubt going to be the second line center of that line. He's had some good seasons. Erik Haula, people forget, I believe it was in 2017-18 with the Vegas Golden Knights, had 55 points, 29 goals, 26 assists. That's a very good season. Like, if you get 55 points out of the second line center, hell yes, you take that every day. Are you kidding me? But he hasn't, other than that, he's had a season with 34 points, 26, 24, 21 last season. So it's not like that 55 might be more of an outlier, unfortunately. But still, I think there's potential there. There's potential for him to be very good with the way in which he plays. But it would be no fun for me to sit here and say, oh, they found it. They found the second line center. It's Erik Haula. See, it was here all along. Because I think it's more fun to sit here and say, well, who would be trade targets for that second line? And I think there's two. There's Tomas Hertl and JT Miller out with the Vancouver Canucks. Both would take a fair amount in a deal. And I think that is where you kind of run into some problems is, well, what do you do? How do you get those guys? Because they're going to be very highly sought after, especially a guy like JT Miller, leader. And then Tomas Hertl is very skilled. I think the best center between those two would be Hurdle. I think Hurdle would be fascinating between Pastrnak and Hall. Like that's a first line on most teams. But that takes a lot. And same with JT Miller. So we'll get into kind of what you would get with them or what you'd have to give up to get them because it leads into some other questions because a lot of these questions kind of overlap. Because Coach COOOAAACH exclamation point asked on Twitter. Basically, they're not going to be very good in a year or two, meaning the Bruins. Who can they dump? Prospects that won't hurt the playoff run this year. And what pending UFOs? UFOs. I think they meant UFAs, but UFOs. Those some aliens over in Area 51. They can go pick them up. But UFAs, can they get back? That aim for a high draft pick the next couple of years. So I think it's put a little easy. I think the real thing is what prospects can be dealt that won't affect the future. And there's only one, in my estimation, that you're actually going to get something for. And by something, I mean like anything. That's Jack Studnicka. And the reason is, and I don't understand why they keep burying Studnicka and they're killing his value. Like this is another example of an asset they're just ruining. And it's Jack Studnicka. Because I think if you pair DeBrusk with Studnicka, with probably you'd have to do a first round pick, you could definitely be in the running for Tomas Hertl, definitely be in the running for JT Miller. If you're willing to put those three things together, maybe another prospect added in. But if that's the crux of your deal, DeBrusk, Studnicka, first round pick, I think you can get Hertl. And again, I think, later in a little while, we're going to get into the main thing I want for that trade package. But if you want a true second line center and a center who can be someone for the future that is going to be a good center, Hertl and JT Miller are those options. Like that's you're going to get production there. That's a huge jump. And that's someone you can have for the future, right? Like I think with Hertl, you kind of want to know both of them. You want to know they're going to want to be here long term, sign here long term. But I do think that Studnicka is a guy, when you pair him with DeBrusk, you're not going to be able to trade Studnicka straight up for Hertl. You can't do Studnicka and Senyshyn for Hertl. That's not how it works. That is not how it works. But you can do Studnicka, DeBrusk, and a first for those players. I think you can do that. You can do that. So I don't think they're going to go that route, but I don't see why they wouldn't. Because as I said all season long, it's not the worst idea to go all in because Brad Marchand's prime is not going to last forever. Patrice Bergeron is also not going to be here forever. So I think, Tuukka Rask coming back as well. Like McAvoy's looking very good. You hope Pastrnak starts to find his game. Feels like a lot of those secondary scores are maybe beginning to find their game at a good time. So again, I look at those and say, all right, maybe it is worth investing in a long-term second line center. So, Coach, you may have a point. You may have a real point there. Okay, so we've discussed DeBrusk and Senyshyn's trade values. We've discussed Olmark. We've discussed the second line, Pasta Haula and Hall. We have discussed who they could get as maybe a second line center. We've discussed Studnicka. So there are some other questions that all kind of pertain to this. But there's one question I do want to hit on. And Nick Crasco DM'd me and asked if the Bruins can only make one trade, what positional player would you like to see? Examples always welcome. I wouldn't just be like, oh, I want them to get someone. No example. So the one player I would love to see them get is Jacob Chitrin from Arizona. And here's why. You need a left shot defenseman. You need a legit number one left shot defenseman because you don't have that right now, right? Like I think the world of Matt Grzelcyk. I think he's terrific, but I think on a very good team, he is a number 2 or number 3 left shot defenseman, right? Like nothing wrong with that. But the Bruins have him in a number 1 role right now, which I think if you want to go deep in the playoffs, it's not really what's going to happen. Derek Forbort, I think they thought could maybe be a number 1. Hasn't been. I don't think he really has that in him. I think he's a very solid number 3, big shutdown left shot defenseman. Mike Riley's an interesting one because it's like, I think the Bruins want a lot more from him. Duh. And I think they signed him to money that is like, oh, you're going to be a steady number 2 left shot defenseman, and that's kind of up in the air. So the reason Jacob Chitrin I think would be good is there's a number of reasons. The first I'll go with his contract. He is signed through 2024-25 at a cap hit of $4.6 million. So you're getting a legit number 1 left shot defenseman for that money. That's pretty damn good. And I like that. I think I don't know how you have a problem with that. So Chitrin, that is a good one to have. Now the question is, what's it going to take to get Jacob Chitrin? What it would take is, I think, a similar offer of DeBrusk, Studnicka, and a first. I think the really important thing is that first round pick. That's probably the most valuable of those assets, but you're maximizing the assets, right? You've diminished them enough. The Bruins are very good at diminishing their assets, but if you package it with an asset like a first round pick that is pretty universally highly valued, you're going to get something. You can get something. And again, Chikrin's a guy who's going to be around a while. Like, you would have him through 2024-25 at the minimum. Pair him with McAvoy, pair him with Carlo. Like, I think you have that is a very valuable asset. That is a very good player you now have because, it's funny. I mentioned Krug earlier in this episode. Krug and Char left in the same offseason. And it's almost like they didn't have a plan on the left side for when they left, right? Like, the whole plan, I think, all along was, Zabora will develop, Vakanainen will develop, and, Zabora didn't start showing signs and, of being a steady NHL defenseman until this year. And unfortunately, he is out for the season. And Vakanainen is just, on the third pair of Providence's defense. Like, Vakanainen, you're not going to see in the NHL consistently. So they had no plan. So instead, it's, you basically trade away, not trade away, but let Chara and Krug go. And Riley and Forbert have taken their place. So there's no plan on that left side. You need something steady on that left side who can, who is really solid in both ends. And that's Jacob Chitrin. So if you ask if I could go for any player, it would be him. And I think he's on the block. Like, Arizona is just kind of selling things off at this point. I mean, they might even be selling themselves. They might be going to Houston. But I think that is the guy who you should 100%, if you have a chance, you give up a lot for him. That's an asset who is very worth it to me. And I think, again, like, those guys don't come around often. It's very hard to go out and get a steady defenseman, or not even just a steady defenseman, but like a top 4, top 2 defenseman. You've got him in that. Like, you have a star with Chikrin. So that's realistic. Like, any positional player, McDavid, but that's not realistic, right? We got to be realistic with these things. So that would be my realistic one that I would kind of go after for anything. And that kind of goes in hand with what would you, someone asked, I believe it was someone named Jacob. I'm going through the questions. Yep. Who would you like to see the Bruins get for DeBrusk? It's someone like that. It's a Hurdle or a JT Miller or, as I said, Chikrin, right? Like, packaging DeBrusk. That is how you, and I mentioned this earlier. I was teasing it a little. I was keeping you listening. If you guys couldn't listen to me for 30 something minutes. But I do think that if you package DeBrusk, you can maximize his value, and that's how you do it, right? DeBrusk, Studnicka, first round pick. If you can put those 3 together, you're going to get something. So that is who I would like to see the Bruins get for DeBrusk. I don't want to see another struggling fringe winger, right? Like, I don't. And again, if you can get DeBrusk, if you can trade DeBrusk for a steady, reliable defenseman, which I don't know how you do that, and I don't have a name off the top of my head that you could do that for, great. But I don't know how you're getting that. So it feels like if it's a 1-for-1, it's going to be a struggling swap. But if you can package him, then I think you've got something. You've got something. Rebel Manaya asked, when is Frederick going to get traded or sent down to Providence? Time for Studnicka to play over Frederick. Yeah, I don't love Frederick. I don't. I've not seen any real progress in his game this year. I know he scored on Sunday against the Red Wings, but it's like I just put a ton of stock in goals. Takes that dumb cross-checking penalty. Feels like a lot of his physical stuff is forced. He goes into every scrum laughing and stuff. Like, I just don't, his game itself, there are times I just don't notice him. So to me, I don't look at Frederick as someone who is worthy of being in the lineup every day right now. I don't. If he needs some physical bite, I guess, but that hasn't even really been provided. Like, I don't know. That doesn't really feel like that necessary at the moment. I don't know. I haven't loved Frederick's game. I know a lot of people haven't. And again, it's that I just don't see the progress. I said before the season, like I would love to see him do a little more offensively, right? Like, more shots on net, more cycling in the ozone, more getting to those high danger areas. Just putting an emphasis on, doing something in the offensive zone. And it doesn't feel like it's there. I know he just scored, but like look past that. There's not a lot there that you'd go, oh, he's worthy of being in the lineup for. Now I get why he's in the lineup. Former first round pick. Like they need him in that. They need him to work. And just all signs are pointing to that he's not working. So I don't know if he's gonna get traded because I don't know what you'd get for him. And I think you want to up his value a little bit before you think of something like that. But Studnicka playing over Frederick, sure. I think it's more Steen or Bleed for that role. Studnicka is not a fourth liner, like not a career fourth liner, but someone like Bleed, I think, has earned the right to play over Frederick. In that regard. So that is today's episode. I think we got every single question. And if I didn't, I apologize, but I believe I got every single question. There's no way I missed any, which is wild. It's hard to keep track of all the questions because some of them overlap. So that is today's episode of Bruins Beat. I like doing these. Let me know if you like these, where I do more questions and kind of take your temperature on things, get you to get some input on this show. I enjoy that. Anyways, that has been today's episode of Bruins Beat. For CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.